If there's one topic in CSS that's buzzing, it's responsive design. Responsive design is a technique for building layouts that adapt to multiple devices and screen sizes. It's about respecting your users' choices for how they view your site. Take a look at Slack's landing page. Notice, as I change the size of the screen, how the layout adapts. These days, more people are using phones than desktops to access the web. If you're not building responsive layouts, you're excluding these users. Take a look at this graph from a Daring Fireball blog post. In it, you'll notice that the trend for phones and tablets is going up, but the trend for laptops and desktops is going down. The first thing to realize is that the web is responsive by default. Let's take a look at the very first website. You'll notice as I resize the screen that the content changes to fill up the space that it's given. There's nothing fancy in CSS that's making this happen. It's us, the developers, who make the web unresponsive. We set fixed widths and heights for elements. We design sites for desktops and ignore other screen sizes. We forget some people don't use a mouse when browsing our site. These are habits we have to break to build responsive layouts. The first rule to writing responsive Flexbox controls is to make sure your controls fill up the width they're given. Take a look at this multi-button layout from the Flexbox forms video. What would happen if I changed the size of one of the forms? Notice how the control adapts to the size of its container? In this case, the form is responsible for defining its width, and the multi-button is responsible for filling it. The advantage to this approach is that we could reuse the multi-button control in other containers that are different sizes without having to change its CSS. At certain screen sizes, some controls start to look a little crummy. Notice what happens to the multi-buttons on small screens. You could fix this by setting the width of the multi-button to be smaller, but then you'd be breaking the previous guideline. Instead, try setting the max width of the container. This allows the container to grow until it runs out of room. This technique also works in the other direction. If you have a control that's too big for its layout, set its min width and make its parent horizontally scroll with overflow X. By far, the most popular way of building responsive layouts is by using media queries to style controls differently on mobile and desktop. The screen sizes where your layout changes are known as breakpoints. Let's take our pricing layout for example. On small screens, it looks broken. However, it's not too hard to make this layout responsive with a few additions. Let's start by commenting out all of the column styles so the pricing tiers stack. In almost every case, a website's mobile layout is simpler than its desktop layouts. Mobile layouts are usually single columns that fill up the full width of their containers. Because of this, it's much easier to start by building the mobile version of your site and then add the layouts for larger screens and media queries. This is known as a mobile-first approach. In our case, we'll add back in the CSS for the columns, but only when the screen is large enough to comfortably fit them. We'll do that by using a media query. Finally, we'll add a little space around the plants on mobiles and prevent their margins from collapsing. And this is how the mobile-first paradigm plays out. We started with the mobile layout, which is simpler, and as the screen gets larger, the layout gets more complex. In this video, you've seen the most important responsive techniques and how they work with Flexbox. You've also seen how a couple of the previous layouts in this book can be made responsive. If you're looking for a good challenge, try making all of the layouts we've covered so far responsive. It's really good practice.